if you want to move into leadership and actually capture the attention of the CEO, your senior leaders, or even just your boss, without drinking the corporate Kool-Aid or shape-shifting into someone you are not, this episode is for you. I'm going to give you the exact framework I use to finally get seen by my executives. Conversation, connection, and invitation. Let's get into it. So back in 2023, I was preparing to coach at a major offsite with the company that I was working for. And this offsite was going to have me fly out from San Francisco into Arizona, and I would have to work with one of the senior leaders. Now, there was like 3 or 4 of us as coaches, and we each were going to be working with a specific senior leader. And we each were going to have kind of breakout sessions that we were managing, that we were facilitating, that we were running, like all of these, experiential exercises. And so we were going to have to work with the executives in order to bring these sessions to life. And so leading up to the event, I was like, you know what? I need to actually connect with this executive because, of course, I need to make sure that we're on the same page. We both know what we need to be doing. We understand all the things, right? And so I would always, send messages to him, sending him emails, trying to get on his calendar, trying to just really have this conversation. And I felt like every single time I actually was not getting the response that I needed. And so, I was feeling like, how am I supposed to show up for this event? How am I supposed to really be my best? And without even talking to him. And as a coach, one of the things that's super important to me is that I love to have kind of like an alignment session, or like, how do we come together and how are we going to be in our relationships before we start anything, right? And this goes with any sessions that I'm leading, any team sessions, even any one-on-ones that I facilitate with someone. I'm like, how do you want to be in relationship with me? And how do we want to be with each other? And if things go bad, how do we be? And especially the fact that I was going to be facilitating with someone I've never facilitated before. This was someone at the top of the food chain, as they would say. And we were going to be in front of about 50 people, that we wanted to make sure that there was some connection, and we ensured that, we had our ducks in a row. But I didn't get the response that I needed. And so no matter how much I was trying to actually put into place the things that I teach and coach on, we just never connected. And so I flew out all the way to Arizona, not having even met up with this person. And it felt weird. I felt like I was going into a situation where there was potential for complete failure. However, being the coach that I am, I knew that things would likely be okay because I knew what I had to do, right? And as a coach, you're always dancing in the moment. You never know what's going to come at you. You never know what is going to be presented to you. And you just learn how to be with that and dance with that, because life is not linear. It's not like 1, 2, 3, and it always happens that way. Things are, so 8. I say a number 8. We're always going, in kind of like circles and loops and around. We're never really going in a linear lane. And so for me, I was like, whatever comes with this, it comes with this. However, it was still important for me, even if I only got 5 minutes of his time while we were there, let's get 5 minutes. And so I started relaying messages to other people that was there, the other coaches that I was working with. And I was like, if you run into him, just let him know I'm looking for him. I'm trying to connect with him. Y'all, when I say I tried to connect with him in all kinds of ways, I'm talking Slack messages, Google DMs, emails, text messages directly to his phone, working with his admin. And I just could not get him on a call or face to face to really discuss how this session was going to go down. And so, I'm out there, I'm trying to relay the message. I still don't have any connection. And so now the session is about to happen. So we get to the session and I have a quick, probably 2 minutes as other people were walking in to be a participant in this session, and just really talk to them and say, okay, so what are we going to do? How is this going to be? I'm going to do this part. You're going to do this part. I have my flow sheet. This is the way, we kind of outlined it. Perfect. Good. All right. Bet. We start to get into the session. And of course, there were awkward moments. There were awkward moments where I would share like, okay, I'm going to turn it over to him and he's going to go take us to this place. Or, it's my turn, or he'll call on me in places that I wasn't even supposed to talk. And I would just have to be quick on my feet, right? And if y'all know me, I am an introvert by nature. I'm not very quick on my feet. I need a lot of time for just reflection and just thinking about what I'm going to say. However, in this case, like, I was a little bit prepared in a sense of, I don't know what's going to happen and I need to be able to take the reins just in case he doesn't know at all. So I was able to like jump in there, but it wasn't 100% at all. There was clear disconnection. And if you've ever watched two coaches facilitate a room together, you can feel when they are not connected. You can feel when they're not on the same page. And for me, this can make or break the session for sure. However, you keep going, right? Now, we kept going and I thought it was successful. We got good feedback, actually, that it was a good session. People really enjoyed it. However, when we got back to San Francisco, we got back to the office, I heard third-party feedback through my direct manager that session was not good. And what it felt like he was saying was, Tashina, you suck and you don't really do a good job. But what he did end up telling me was that the manager, the executive leader, felt like I was not prepared, felt like I didn't know what I was supposed to do. All of these things that I was like, pause, sounds like a little bit of deflection here. And because I was ready, I knew what it was that I was supposed to be doing. However, sir, you never connected with me and I got the receipts to prove it. I've been trying to contact you, right? So it felt like a little stab in my chest for sure. And I knew that this was going to have much bigger implications. And the bigger implication was this person could literally make or break my career. And that was the moment that I said to myself, this is not going to happen to me again, ever again. Never would I allow anyone to define for me my competence because they didn't show up. And so I put into action the very exact steps that I'm teaching you today, because I think it's important to know that you're going to have executives who are going to doubt you, question you. They're going to sometimes deflect, especially if they're not at the maturity level that you think that they're supposed to be. Because here's what I want you to know. Just because they have the title of an executive or a high level leader does not mean that they are mature. Does not mean that they have emotional intelligence. Does not mean that they are, wise in their thoughts and reactions, or they've even done the work, right? And when I talk about the work, I mean the coaching work, the work to be the leader that they're supposed to be, right? And I think that's where we get confused, is we think because somebody has a title, they've arrived and they have it, they've arrived that threshold of like the most competent, leader. And that is not true. Sometimes there's a lot of work that they need to do because they're still being driven by their triggers or their insecurities. And so we as leaders, and when we step into our own leadership, we have to be able to navigate that and kind of redirect things, but also set the record straight, right? We can't be afraid of that. Okay. So I want to teach you what I did and how it worked out so well for me. It did not break my career, because I think this will be valuable for you to know, especially as you are growing your career. You're going to come against these things. You're going to come up against an executives insecurities and triggers and doubts about themselves that they may just put off on you. Okay. So the principle that I want you to take from this is that you don't have to treat senior leaders like they are God, okay? They are not God. They are people just like you. They make mistakes. They have insecurities, and they want to be great at their jobs just as much as you do, okay? And so the moment that you stop putting them on a pedestal is the moment that your career is going to grow, and you are actually going to stand in your leadership, your identity of who you are as a leader much more confidently. It's the time that you're going to be much more courageous in how you speak, how you show up. You're not going to shrink. You're not going to hide. You're actually going to come to situations already self-validating yourself, already having the self-trust that you need in order to move forward and to make progress in your career. So the first shift is conversation. Okay, so that was the very first thing that had to happen in this situation. So there are two parts to this. Conversation has to do with how you speak. And what I mean by that is this your conviction? How convicted are you? And then how you communicate your ideas, your thoughts, your perspective, right? So when this situation happened, I was like, I need to have a conversation with them. Now, what I will tell you is that I told my direct manager that I was going to have this conversation. However, there was like, no, you don't need to do that, Sheena. And I was like, yes, the hell I do. Because here's another thing that I want you to know. Your boss is not responsible for your career. And so you have to be the one to say, you know what? No, I'm going to take this on and I'm responsible for my career. They are not going to be able to do all the heavy lifting for you over time. And that boss may leave one day and you're still there with that executive. And so you have to learn to take your career by the reins and say, you know what, I own this and I'm going to have this conversation, right? And sometimes even your direct manager may have insecurities as well. And so they're like, no, don't go talk. Don't go say anything. Oh my God, this is going to be a disaster if you do. Now, I was like, you know what? I am grown. And I am, first of all, old enough to have this conversation because clearly this executive did not have it. They weren't courageous enough. They didn't want to have the conversation, which was wild because I'm like, you're an executive. Come tell me, why did you have to tell my boss? You're essentially my boss's boss, right? So why not come talk to me and tell me, right? So I was like, you know what? I'm on this. I'm going to go have this conversation, right? So I was already convicted that it needed to happen. I was already sure there was nothing that was going to stop me from having this conversation, right? Even if this conversation would have went to dirt, I still would have said I needed to have this conversation. So when you are convicted and how you speak, you need to say what you believe. You need to stand on business, right? And be clear about what you're standing on. You don't want to water yourself down. You don't want to shrink yourself. You don't want to use words like I think, or, maybe I'm wrong, or I'm going to say a thought that's probably, not the best. No. Be convicted. Be clear. Stand on business. When it's here, you don't have to worry about anything else. And that's one thing that I'm really starting to understand is like, someone is true to who they are and what they say when you can feel that they believe it here. There is nothing that's going to stop them, right? So the first thing with conversations is that you have to be convicted. You have to believe what you're going to say and stand on business. The second thing is how you communicate your ideas. Now, we've all heard the phrase, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And that is true. Like the way you communicate your ideas is important in both tone, but also in clarity. And so you want to make sure that whatever you're sharing is clear, it's not confusing. You need to ensure that people know where you're leading from, what bothered you about that information, or what actually rubbed you the wrong way, or what would you have hoped could have happened in a better way, right? They want to see it. It's like when you're out somewhere. I want to say like with animals, and I don't know which kind of animal right now because it's not coming to me, but they can smell the fear, right? And humans can smell when you're nervous, when you're scared, the same way. And so they can smell if you're doubting yourself, if you're hesitating, or if you're making yourself small. And so how you're communicating needs to have a level of boldness and certainty. You have to have that as you're talking to this leader. And so in this case, I wanted to communicate, one, what they thought about me not being prepared was wrong. Two, I wanted to re-communicate that I tried to actually connect with you many times, which was funny because once I was having this conversation, it was so easy to get on this person's calendar, which tells me maybe they were kind of like, avoiding me. So I wanted to make sure that I communicated that, but I also wanted to communicate what would have felt better when situations like this happen. Okay. What would have felt better for me is that this executive would have came directly to me, even if they could have been like, Tashina, this is what, was wrong. This is where I felt you missed the mark, anything. But this leader did not come to me. This leader didn't say anything to me. They went directly to my direct manager, who didn't even have all the context, didn't know what happened. And then when we were looking at survey results, everything was great, right? And so clearly it was his own judgment, his own perspective. And so you have to be able to communicate your ideas in a way that makes sense, right? In a way that they can understand. And a lot of that is really being clear on what your expectations are as well, right? Which is what I literally wanted to have a conversation about leading up to this event, because I wanted to let them know what the expectations I had, and so they could tell me what their expectations were, because I'm walking into this not knowing, right? Now, the reason why we don't have these conversations, because I know you're probably thinking, dang, Tashina, you was bold. You went and told, oh my God, you did that? Yes, I did, because I had gotten to a point in my career where I no longer was going to just stand by the sidelines and not have conversations like adults do. A lot of times we don't have these conversations because of our own self-limiting beliefs, because of our own societal conditioning. We think, oh, they have this title, so they must be more important. We can't talk to them. We don't have access to them. We can't just say what we want to say. We can't just put a meeting on calendar. And so we have these societal conditions, not to mention he was a white male. And so I didn't want to be held by that, but some of us do. And then sometimes we just don't know how to do it, right? And we don't know how to do it because, and this is where I always say I don't like the term executive presence, because sometimes our organizations expect us to have executive presence, but never put us in position to learn what executives do, or how they communicate together, how they make decisions, how they discover, decisions and strategy and things like that. So how do you know what an executive does, right? And so that's a whole other conversation I'm not going to get into on this episode, but I definitely just want to share, like, these are the things that I know and I work with my clients on, because I'm like, dang, like, we've been so inundated with information that we're not good enough, that titles mean everything, and that's the only time we have permission. And so this is why we don't have the conversations that we are supposed to. Now, I do want to be very honest with you. I was terrified, like so scared to have to address this situation. I truly was. But what mattered to me more was my reputation. This leader was not about to throw my reputation in the trash can after I put so much hard work into becoming the coach that I am. Not to mention, I put a lot of my own money, right? When the organization wouldn't sponsor me, when they wouldn't pay for the classes that I wanted to go to, when I had to have, so many different reasons and proof of my work in order to move forward. All this work I've already put in I have equity that I can pull from at this point. Like, you are not going to mess up my reputation, right? And so I had to advocate for myself, because being silent, sit on the sidelines, allowing my boss to have a kind of view of me, having my boss's boss think something of me, and having this executive think something of me, not to mention who else were they going to talk to. I wasn't going to have it. So I wanted to nip that in the bud, because I wanted to confirm that this story was not true. This was a perspective. I understand the impact that it had on you, and let's make some things clear. Okay. And so that's why I don't want you to think like I was just, big Billy badass, because I wasn't. I was afraid. Here I am, a Black woman in a corporate environment, mostly made up of white males who sit at the top, and that could have made or break my career. Okay. But what I want you to see is that conversations are about getting clear. It's about setting expectations. It's about getting aligned. It's not about confrontation. You have the conversation so when you come up to situations where there's conflict, you already know how to handle it. You already know how to deal with it. And so your job as a leader is to make your thoughts visible and known. Make sure that people are very clear on who you are, what you stand for, and have some level of conviction. Okay. So that's the first thing with conversations. That's the first point of, the thing that I want you to understand. Now, what I want to be clear here is I am walking you through 3 different steps. But again, it's not linear. It doesn't necessarily happen in order. But these are the 3 things, or the 3 ways that you need to really be clear on, how you move through this environment, and how you really get your CEO to notice you and to really respect you, no matter what position you're in. Okay. All right. So the second thing is connections. Now, your relationships to executives can make or break your career, which is why I had such a hard time with having this conversation at first, but I knew I had to do it, and I pushed myself to do it. But your relationship with your executives can make or break your career. But many people will avoid building these relationships because of hierarchy. Of course, I talked about that a little bit. Or because they feel like they have to have permission first. Like, oh, I better not put my name on their calendar unless I have permission to do so. There's also a lot of people pleasing. Like, we want people to like us, right? And I'm just like, oh my God, like, this is not the business. Like, we people pleasing. So that means we're getting permission. That means we're being nicer. We're saying yes to things we don't want to say yes to, right? But that happens. Or we have our own internal narratives, or our own kind of like societal beliefs that we're not enough. And then we also don't build the relationships because of our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn responses. And so we have these responses in our life where it's like, man down, nothing's going to happen. And we spend a lot of time there. And it's almost like debilitating or paralyzing. And sometimes we can't get out of it because, again, of our self-limiting beliefs, because of the things that we have learned about ourselves and our societies, right? And so when you're building, relationships are so important because you want your executives to know you, right? And I know there's a lot of things in the back of our mind. Like, I want my executive to know me, but I don't want my executives to think I'm weak. And so it's so interesting because we have a situation in our society with vulnerability. We don't like to be vulnerable. Why? Because there's a lot of bad actors out there who will literally use your vulnerabilities against you. And so that's why people don't come and they don't say they need help, and they don't say what's going on for them in their lives and things like that. Y'all, I was that person where I was like, I'm not telling nobody about my family. I'm keeping my personal and my business stuff separate. I'm not going to ask for help. I'll go and I'll research it and figure it out myself, even if it takes forever. I'm going to do all of these things because, my vulnerability can be used against me. If I'm overwhelmed, if I'm burnt out, I'm not going to say that. I have been coaching someone who he's been saying like he is burnt out, he's overwhelmed, he doesn't like, he's done. However, when I, press him to be like, okay, you need to tell your manager, he's like, but if I tell them, they'll never ask me to do anything. They'll think he doesn't use the word weak, but essentially they won't come to him like they're coming to him now. And so there is this like belief that, I can be seen as a weak person or not valuable or not someone essential in the organization if I need help, if things are not going the way that I need it to go for the organization, right? And so we don't want to open up to our senior leaders in that way. We don't want to be too visible, because if we're too visible, they'll see inside of us. They're going to see inside our souls, right? And so we don't do it. However, relationships is the easiest and fastest way to grow your career. Even if you don't have all the skills, even if you don't have all the things you need, a relationship can move you to the next level. And y'all know I'm not lying, because you've met some people who don't know diggly dog nothing what they doing in their role. However, they done moved up. Why? Because they have a relationship with somebody, right? And so every time I am in the process where I know I need to meet with a senior leader, which is very often, by the way, because I'm a coach, I'm always meeting with the decision makers or the people who have like the kind of check off of what should happen. So every time I meet with them, I always have to say to myself, they are just people with a fancy title. They are just people. They are like me. They're not bigger. They're not smaller. They are human, right? I'll never forget one day I was listening to, years ago, I listened to a TED Talk by Brene Brown. And she said she was about to go out on stage and she was going to present this talk to all of these like high credential people with all these like amazing titles and backgrounds. And she just had to continue to repeat to herself, people, people, people. Because she had to remind herself, I may be coming into a room full of C-suite leaders, but they are people. They are human. They have the same triggers and insecurities and things that I may have. And let me tell y'all, it works and it's better for you actually in the long term, because when you can see somebody as uniquely human, the better off you can be. In my coach program, we call it being naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. When we can see people like that, we're not trying to fix them. We're not trying to change them. We see them as who they are. And so I want you to know that works. When you start just shifting your perspective, these are people just like me. That is when you are better off in that relationship. And you start to connect from a place of equality and equity, not hierarchy. You're not thinking big me, little you, or big them, little me. You're thinking of like, we're together, we're aligned, we're the same, right? We all bleed the same. If we get cut in a specific place, we both gonna hurt in the same way, right? And so that's the kind of thing that you want to be thinking, okay? So you have conversations and you have relationships. The last one is invitation. Now, the invitation is the one that people avoid the most. And sometimes the invitation is the very first thing you do, just so you know. Again, this isn't like a 1, 2, 3 step. This is like, it could be any of these at any given time for any different context. But this is the one people avoid the most, right? An invitation, y'all, is simply to continue the relationship, to begin the relationship, or to invest in this connection over time. That's all it is. Okay. But for so many of us, we just avoid it, and it feels very risky. So in this same situation, we had our conversation, and I was like, yo, this is how I would like you to do this the next time. Like, it would have felt better for me. It felt like you were giving information third party, and then they couldn't even communicate to me really good what really was the issue. And so we were able to clear some things up, like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that you were really trying to, meet up with me. But, that's what it is. And so, how can we move forward on this, right? And I said, you know what? I said it in the moment. Like, I made the decision in the moment, right? And I came up with this framework after that. But in the moment, I was like, I'm going to keep him connected to me. I'm going to stay connected because, again, this person can make or break my career. And right now, I got an advantage. I want them to help me make this career. That's what I want to do. So I said, you know what? Can we stay in contact? Can we continue to have these, meet up once a month for an hour, mentorship things? I can run some things by you that I'm doing. And so, like, this is what we can do, right? And so for this moment, it was scary to say it, but then he was like, yeah, for sure. And we literally had meetings set up after that every month. We were able to connect. My boss and my boss's boss didn't even have meetings like this with this guy, right? And so I'm like, yes, like, it's such an advantage, and it's something that we're afraid to do. But when we do it, we realize we're not going to die or we're not going to go to jail from asking to be in connection with people. People desire connection. They want connection. This is what they want to do, right? But for us, for women of color, for marginalized identities, it feels risky because maybe there's going to be some rejection. And so we're afraid to be rejected, or we've been conditioned to not bother people or bother authority, right? Because you don't speak unless you're spoken to. At least that's what I learned in my house, right? And so if they're not pressing the issue, if they're not coming to be with, like, to create a connection with me, I shouldn't be asking, right? Sometimes it's like that. Or we don't want to feel needy. We don't want to feel like we're bothering them, right? Or we stay at arm's length, and it literally will block our own growth. This person was connected into the thing that the CEO wanted. This person was connected to the secrets of the business, the unspoken rules, the things that, nobody's really talking about unless you're sitting at that executive level table. So I needed that relationship. And from this event that could have necessarily broke me, I would use it to my advantage. And so I invited this person in to be in relationship with me. Okay. And so that felt good. It felt like an accomplishment for sure. Forget all the other stuff. I accomplished something huge. Okay. So I want you to realize, I want you, first of all, to stop assuming that executives don't want to invest in you. They do. They want to have this connection with you that is strong and that, just brings out the best in everybody, because they want to be connected. When they say it's lonely at the top, it really is. These people are lonely. They don't get to be in the weeds and do all the work that got them to that level. Now it's more strategy, a lot of meetings, a lot of, fire drills, a lot of water hose, putting out fires, all of these things. And so they do want to be connected because Just as advantageous it was for me to be connected, it was for them as well. Because guess what? Now they could pick my brain. They can learn what's happening and have more well thought out decisions in the future. They are human beings with the same fears, with the same doubts, and the same hopes, just like you. Okay. And so that's what I want you to know today. It can be scary when you're first thinking about it, but let me tell you, I'm not afraid to have a conversation with any senior leader after that. I'm like, that's what, and the reason why it feels easy is because I'm like, he really was giving bad feedback about me and I turned that thing around. I really did. And I know that can be possible for you. Okay. It can be possible. So these steps are not rigid. There's no perfect 1, 2, 3 step. Like, I don't want you to think that. And please, 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 please promise me that you're not going to force being extroverted. You're not going to force, like, I got to be the most social butterfly. Like, you don't have to do that. And you don't have to ignore clear signs of avoidance or disengagement. If they are avoiding you, if they're disengaged, like, notice those, practice discernment, and be intentional about what it is and what that relationship is going to be. I don't want you to make this transactional. Yes, there is some transactions you want out of this. But the better thing is that you're having a relationship with somebody who is going to pour into you and that you're going to pour into. And it's going to make things so much better. A white man and a black woman coming together and actually having this relationship. Do you know how much he has been able to learn from having a black woman, that he can pick their brain all the time? Y'all, it doesn't get better than that. So here's what I want you to take with you. Senior leaders are not God. They are not sitting on this high almighty host of, they can't tell you whether you're going to live or die. They can't give you all the things that God can give you. So don't consider them God. They are people just like you. They got to speak to God just like you do. Okay. And their title isn't a measure of your worth. Just because they have a title, again, doesn't mean they've arrived. There's a lot of leaders or managers or whatever people with these titles that got a lot of work to do, y'all. They really do. You were hired because of your skill, your perspective, and your capabilities. And you would be, disadvantaging yourself by not using those things. So don't let those gifts go to waste. And remember, Brene Brown's words, people, people, people. They are people just like you. Okay. So you do not want to go somewhere and not use these skills the way you should. You don't want to be known for having good communication in an interview, but then now it's time to have some communication with an executive leader and you're not having that conversation. Okay. So if this episode resonated with you and you are thinking this is doable, but I need a little bit more support. I want to talk it through. I want to, before I start to apply it, I don't want to mess this up, right? Because of course we don't want to mess it up, right? At this point, when this happened, I was a coach. I've dealt with a lot of crucial conversations. I've helped people navigate through tension. So I kind of knew what to do, right? And I want to teach you. I want to teach you how to do the same thing, okay? So if this is something you need support on, let's discuss my 6-figure leader program and how it can help you accelerate your career in 2026 and stop doubting yourself and being insecure and not talking to the people you need to talk to. Y'all, we grown. Let's talk it out, okay? And we don't want you to change who you are while you're at it. Okay. So if this is for you, please reach out to me. The link is in the show notes and we can have a discussion about how the 6-figure leader program can work for you. See you in the next episode. Bye.